Hello, retired smuggler David McMillan here, and I'd been threatening, or promising really, to interview some people I'd met over the years. And this person is somebody I met rather late, but still very much worth meeting, and I hope you'll think so too. His name is Pieter Tritton, and he spent over 9 years in a prison in Ecuador. Was it for a crime he didn't commit? No. We don't want any of those kind. We want the people who meant business. And Peter certainly did in those days. He'd been around quite a bit before that. I hadn't met him. And we met extraordinarily, but typical in this world, as he was returning from a foreign country's prison into a place that was holding me on extradition to a country's prison. Yes, this was the time at Wandsworth Prison when I was being attempted to be taken back to Bangkok to face those 25-year-old charges. But anyway, tonight is not about me. It's about somebody else. Well, let's see if I can keep my mouth shut long enough for you to hear Peter's story, or part of it. It's such a long one. Let's go. Hey, hello people. Today I'm with Pieter Tritton, who has had the experience, as I have, as you know, of being in an alien environment, a prison in a foreign country. Now, was this a comfortable place? I don't know. It was in South America, in Ecuador, and this happened some years ago. And Peter, how long ago are we talking about now?
Hi, David. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, I got arrested in 2005 and
Right.
released eventually in 2015. So I spent
Ah,
9 years and 3 months in prison in Ecuador and then spent about the last 10 in Wandsworth. But
the last, what, 10
10
months?
months, last
Yeah,
10 months.
right. Is that an unusually high sentence for that part of the world?
The maximum sentence there is 25 years, which they tend to give out to, the bigger sorts of drug dealers. I mean, the British police did actually ask or request the Ecuadorian authorities that I'd be given 25 years because that's what they wanted to sentence me to in Britain.
So the
But
British police actually interfered in your case to make it worse,
yeah,
did they?
a lot. They flew out to Ecuador on 4 different occasions just to make sure that I wasn't, well, A, to make sure I was still in the prison, and B, to make sure I wasn't getting out.
Yeah. Oh, that's charming of them. Oddly enough, I had that experience with the Australian police many years ago. In
Yeah,
Thailand, they kind of manufactured a mock interview with police, published it in a local paper, and
yeah.
that edition of the paper was used in evidence against me, which wasn't really fair because it was death penalty. But why were the why were the police so keen to make your life more miserable than it already was?
Well, I mean, when I was in Quito, because I started the sentence in Quito in
That's
the
the
prison.
capital, isn't it?
Yeah, the capital of Ecuador. And spent 2 years in that prison, but trying to escape from there like you did.
Uh,
We were digging a tunnel basically out of the prison and had a few other plans as well.
um,
And
what?
this
How long would it have taken to dig your way through? Did you estimate?
it would have been probably a month or two. Um, it, the thing is, it was an old prison built in somewhere around 1850,
Right.
sort of around the sort of British style Victorian prison.
Yes,
You know,
I
this,
think the
hang on.
Britain can be thanked by the rest of the world, and not by too many
Yeah.
crooks, that our prisons really caught on, and so many of
Well,
them are the same.
a lot of people had already escaped out of Quito, out of that prison, particular prison, by digging tunnels anyway.
Right.
So we had a saying there that if you opened up one hole, you were likely to find another two or three already either
Uh,
partially dug or fully excavated. That's a
um,
bit cyber work
I mean, it's a natural thing, isn't it? If you're in prison, try to escape. I
yeah,
always
on
recommend
your
it.
mind every day, isn't it?
I was in a prison in sort of what was it, a small town in country Victoria, which had been used in the First World War to hold German prisoners of war.
This is in
And
Australia.
in Australia, yeah, and found a lot of tunnels under there in the basement. That I think there were about 4 main ones. In fact, the only reason it was an open prison, the only reason they didn't want you wandering around the place too much was because you might fall into one of these tunnels and sue them for damages or something. But let's back up a bit here. Peter, there's a great book that I've been reading of yours called El Infierno. That's in hell or something like that.
Yeah, it means the hell, or it means the inferno, but
yeah,
that's what the South Americans use as the term for hell, the hot place.
Oh, we've got a few in English, haven't we? The infernal regions and all of that. Actually, it's got. Look, I'm going to read out the full title of that because it's El Infierno. Drugs, gangs, riots, and murder. My time inside Ecuador's toughest prison. So there's more than one prison that you end up in. But really, everybody has got their arrest story. And we can always look back on it and kind of think, oh, I don't know, there were signs on the walls, feelings. Yours was in a hotel room, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I actually knew that we were under surveillance many months beforehand.
Before you even got to South America?
Well, on the last occasion, yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, I'd actually left Britain some months earlier, prior to going to Ecuador the last time, because of a really large bust up in Edinburgh where they'd taken out one of our labs.
Right. What was that cooking up, by the way?
No, well, it was extracting the cocaine.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The rubber that we were impregnating it in.
I mean, I really think the South Americans are the most ingenious about developing techniques for hiding it.
Yeah, they've got a lot of money to do it with, haven't they?
And that's true. I think the first time I came across anything of their handiwork was some kind of dinnerware. And it was the old thing of dissolving it in alcohol, reducing it down into a sort of a paste, mixing it with something that you could separate later on, that could be filtered out easily enough. I notice readers of my stuff and viewers are always kind of really interested in an academic way, I'm sure, of the technical goings on behind that. I noticed on my Kindle version of your book that you can extract how many times different sections have been highlighted by readers. And,
oh, really?
Yeah, when it comes to the sort of, let me think, technicalities, yes, but also I noticed this morning the section dealing with how much to pay lawyers had been highlighted 278 times by your readers.
Really?
Yeah. By the way, viewers, there's a description box under all these videos and a link to Peter's book. It's just a click away on Amazon, which is the easiest way to get it, since they control everything just about. But so this, you were saying you had a feeling that, well, you were sure that you were under surveillance.
Yeah. I mean, we knew that we were under surveillance because we'd actually been working indirectly with someone up in the Metropolitan Police in London. I said, like I say,
but he was feeding information back to you.
Yeah. So
was that always good information? I mean, I've always been suspicious that.
Well, it was good up until a point because I was cross-referencing what they were saying with what we'd been doing because it was the surveillance notes.
Oh, okay. So he was kind of backing up his authenticity by giving you actual documents.
Then after a while, the guy who was the intermediary started trying to demand more money, and then started to.
So it wasn't like you were face to face with this.
No. And then basically it became unreliable and too expensive, so we backed away from it. So
and really
have stopped then, really. But
I suppose if you cut off a source of information, always the nagging worry that something that next week will come up which will change everything. You know what the Chinese triads in Canton and Hong Kong, they have had this technique over the years of developing somebody that the police will go to and catch him with some minor dark deed, some gambling charge or small drug one, and that person will become the informer.
yeah,
So they engineer the informer into the hands of the
misinformation.
police, and they'll get fed enough to make it seems like the guy's genuine. They'll get a tip off about maybe a warehouse or something, and when they actually get in there, they'll find empty packing cases and still smoldering cigarette butts or something.
We were actually doing something similar because we worked out because one of our first labs got taken out in Crystal Palace, and a couple of my business partners, should we say, got taken out. And one of them, who was a Colombian, was released after 6 months, and we had suspicions that he'd been turned by the police, which quite soon became very strongly evident. So we were feeding him false information, which we knew he was feeding back to the police.
I suppose, yes, there'd be some comfort in that. You never really know whether they're accepting it or all you've kind of done is tip them off that you're sort of onto them. I found
they knew that we were onto them. They definitely knew that we knew that, vice versa, that we were watching them and they were watching us.
So it was quite a straight cat and mouse game going on there before this big arrest. Had you? I remember, when I was especially on the Thailand trip, I was just smothered by police in much the same way, I guess.
Yeah.
But in the week leading up to it, I was very carefully arranging things so that it wouldn't look like I was leaving town to the observers, but quietly kind of letting family and those close to me know that I wouldn't be available for a while. I didn't really mean 2.5 years, but there we are. And I couldn't help. See, it's very hard to dismiss that feeling that I noticed in your book you were saying that, you said some goodbyes to family. And I think was it your dad who sort of half guessed that was something going on?
Yeah, he took me to the train station on the morning that I was leaving because I was in France by that point because I'd done a runner after the Edinburgh problem.
Right.
Smuggled into France by the Turkish mafia, basically. So I was hiding in France, and then my father came out and took me to the train station on the morning that I was leaving to fly out to Ecuador. Right. So I had to get the train from down in the middle of France up to Paris.
Mm-hmm.
And at the train station, I remember him looking at me, and I could just tell that he knew I wasn't going to be coming back.
Really?
Big.
Very. Well, do you mean it was his feeling that you were planning something that would take you away for a long time, or you didn't? Your troubles in the UK were going to be too strong, or a different kind of feeling, like I
don't know. I think
witchy foreboding about the future.
Yeah, some sort of foreboding. I think he just had a sixth sense that I wasn't going to come back that time. It was very.
And yet he'd known. I mean, he'd known that you'd been traveling before, and he never had the same kind of worried look on his face or anything like that.
No, not that I'd ever noticed.
It is. I mean, but we can't in life. We can't react to every sense of trepidation that ever comes up. We'd never do anything, I suppose.
Do you know what? I'd actually had dreams before I went out to Ecuador that on that last occasion that I was going to. Yeah, they may have been some time before that I was going to end up in prison because I remember telling my girlfriend that I was with at the time.
Yeah.
About one particular dream where I actually even described the prison in Quito. I didn't know where it was going to be, but I actually described the layout of the prison, the color of the walls, and the exact structure of the building. And
So,
Six
but you
later
mean,
happened, and she was there with me, and she was just because she couldn't believe it.
so this was not just like a generic prison you were describing. This had particular details that
Yeah,
matched up.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Weird.
And when you'd woken from those dreams, did they? Well, I guess you just dismissed them as manifest in a dream,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. So I guess I never really know. I remember getting. I was going on one run over to Thailand, and it was well organized, I thought. But the closer I drove to the airport, the more ill I got. You know, I was throwing up by the time I had to stop at the midpoint of the journey. And I actually gave it up on that one. I thought, no, I don't know. Look, maybe it's just me. I've got a sudden attack of the shakes or something, but I'll
Probably.
never really know what it might be. But it could have, you know, sometimes things can save you from, they seem terrible, but they save you
Yeah.
from things that could be worse.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I've had similar things happen in the past where I've been on the way to a meeting down in London, I remember one time.
Yeah.
And I was in a hire car, and all these different things kept happening. Like nearly had a blowout, and I was late. There was a traffic jam. There's all sorts of stuff
Yeah.
delaying me from getting there. And I ignored all of this. And when I actually got there, I nearly got shot
Oh, yeah.
just off the Chiswick High Road. And yeah,
Was this the shooter was actually intending to shoot you particularly, or you know, was just
well, he was
angry at the world?
no, I mean it was a robbery, but he had
Oh, okay.
one of these little derringers, the two-shot derringers,
Yeah, yeah.
and he was obviously high on something because he was really nervous, and that's the worst.
No, yes, true.
Nervous guy with a gun pointed at you. Just
Never a good thing. You know. It's probably. I think a calm person with a gun, it's either going to result in your swift and merciful execution,
yeah,
or you'll get off because you'll negotiate your way out of it.
yeah, yeah.
But those nervy ones, I mean, they'll end up shooting everything inside. But I think that Derringer you're talking about, it was only a 22, isn't it?
Sorry, say that again.
It's a 22 caliber, that Derringer, that little one you're
I
talking about.
I don't know. I think they come in different calibers. I think you can get different
Oh,
calibers.
right. Still, I mean, it's not good to be shot by anything, but
And it was close.
yeah, yeah. It's odd how um, even a small gun can scare people. I used to have a kind of a, I don't know what you'd call a dinner jacket going out in the evening, little, I think it was a Beretta too, automatic. It was a pathetic thing. I shot a tree with it once and didn't. The tree sort of shrugged it off. But the sight of it when something happened still sent people jumping under tables because
Yeah,
it's a gun.
yeah,
And
yeah, sure.
nobody wants to get shot. So you had this foreboding, and um, the arrest in Ecuador was in a hotel. Were you actually in the hotel room?
Yeah, yeah. We'd been out for dinner, me and my girlfriend, and
Yeah.
I mean that was one of the things where we noticed. Well, I noticed that we were under surveillance because I'd had all these little things going on all day. People sort of
Oh yeah,
uh,
accidentally sort of
s-
crossing your path.
yeah, people's faces appearing more than once. And this guy
Mm.
came in, this European-looking guy came into the restaurant and sat just to our right at a table. And I was watching him, and I noticed that he was sat there, but he was pretending to read the menu, but the menu was upside down.
Oh right, he was
I
so
was saying to myself,
preoccupied he
to look
didn't
at
know.
this guy out to the right. He's sat there, obviously eavesdropping on us, and he's got the menu upside down. Yet he's pretending to read it. It was ridiculous.
Um, yeah, they can be. I don't know what it is about them, but they do. I think it's the kind of people they recruit for that surveillance sort of stuff.
Yeah,
They're often as not working detectives, as it were, but
no,
they're kind of moonlighters and people dragged in from somewhere else. Um, and sometimes too, I confronted a couple just to get a break in the surveillance, so they'd get a new team,
yeah, I've
and
done the
give me
same.
a data. But you know what? I mean, this was a blatant confrontation. I drove them round in a circle, got out, knew they were coming down the lane, stood in front of the car, and
I did
went
the
up.
same thing in Edinburgh when they were on that lab just before they busted it. That's why they busted it, because we
Okay.
spotted them, or the Colombians had spotted a police car. Well, not a police car, a plainclothes car sat out the back of the apartment. So
Right.
they'd called me. I'd gone down and had a look, and I said, "Yeah, that's definitely the police." So I'd seen them looking up at the back of the building.
Right.
So I went down, jumped in the van I was driving, and I noticed I'd already seen that they moved into a car park because they spotted us looking at them.
Okay.
So I went into the car park and blocked them in with the van to make it quite apparent that I knew that they were there. Backed up, let them out, and then followed them through Edinburgh for about 15 minutes until I got bored. And then,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. In my case, it was a man and a woman. She didn't
this is a man
report
and
the
a woman.
thing. Yeah, they think it looks less suspicious.
Yeah, yeah.
It just, but here's the thing, and I know people watching this, so note that on their little scribble pad for future reference. If you think you're being shadowed by, and it's a man and a woman, take a look at them, because their relationship will not be anything like boyfriend and girlfriend or husband and wives, who are always on at each other, and one's trying to,
Yeah, yeah.
he's trying to think how he can die or run away, and she's getting in his ear, or vice versa. But there is this interchange between them, which is not
Yeah,
there. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
they might have sent them out as man and woman, but they're kind of rigidly staring at.
Yeah, exactly. You can tell, just by the looks and the way they're watching you.
Yeah, but because this wasn't reported back to headquarters, them going back saying, "Look, we got made today. We'll have to do something." There wasn't a big team change the next day, so that's something I didn't really even think of taking into account. That even within the force, they're still little humans and covering up their mistakes. So,
Yeah.
but did you ever think, oh, look, this is, well, you must have thought this is getting too hot. I should
Yeah,
put the brakes on it for a while.
yeah. I mean that was the job. Well, the last job that I did out to Ecuador was going to be that break point. But
Oh, this was the one last one until
yeah, the
you
one
took a
last
break.
one. You should never do that one last one.
There's always so many damn good reasons for doing that last one, though. It's a bit like, well, okay, I could use the money. Must blind Freddy at least another half load,
Yeah,
and it'd clear up some loose ends,
yeah,
and
yeah.
everybody's going to be happy. And I did want to meet Pablo, and I needed an opportunity to go over there I mean, everything I'm saying is probably exactly the same as
Yeah.
the ruination list that everybody who looks back on that one
I'll tell you
last
one
job.
reason that I ended up doing that last one, even though I had a pretty bad feeling, was because I knew by that point that I was a goner anyway. After the lab got busted in Edinburgh, because I was so close to that. They were all over me by that point. They knew who I was. They knew that I'd been in there, and I'm pretty sure that they had forensics that would have tied me to it. That's why I disappeared. So I knew that they were coming for me. So I thought, fuck it, I'll just do one last job, and and then disappear to Thailand. I was actually going out to Thailand.
Oh, well,
I
sort of
never
out of
made
one
money
particular.
to come over, but obviously I never made it back.
No, no. Well, I mean, Thailand was not going to be work. I guess it was just
No,
going to
no,
be
that was just going to be chill
relaxation.
out for 6 months, see what happened, let it cool down.
Had you been to Thailand before?
No, no,
Oh, right. So that would have been all new. Uh,
yeah,
uh yeah. I guess people have recommended Costa Rica as a good kind of not for work, but as a kind of getaway place. They say
really.
that's
Is there no extradition there or something?
um, they're not very cooperative on that front, but it's not so much that. I was just thinking that the recommendations were that it's not. Well, you know how it is in Colombia that everybody's got a bit of a game going on,
Yeah.
and the people that you know are tied up with other people you don't, and you either might like to meet them or you really don't want to meet them.
Yeah, yeah.
Nothing much in between. And my main man there, who was a friend I'd actually met in a Danish prison. You know, it was that little 6 degrees of separation within the underground world.
Yeah.
Um, I used to recommend to some young man starting out, get yourself thrown in an Amsterdam jail for 6 months
Oh,
for something minor. And
sorry, I've got a call. Wait, I just have to cancel that. Hold on. Oop.
oh, you
Yeah,
had that call came in, did it?
coming. No, that was coming in from Colombia, oddly enough.
Well, well, there was a timely interruption, I guess. It was a friend, an old friend, and Peter just had to take the call because, well, the time differences between the UK and Colombia. Draw your own conclusions, but we should keep out of it, shouldn't we? Anyway, what's wrong with keeping in touch with old friends? Mostly nothing. Once our call was connected up again, we began talking about escaping throughout the world. And there's no sentence that's not worth escaping from, even if it was an afternoon. And here's what happened there. All right, we're back with Pieter Tritton, who survived over 9 years in, well, they say hellholes, but everything has its good and bad sides, but mostly bad in Ecuador, I guess. Peter, I was going to say, you know, we've all been arrested, but you... something that makes it worse is when there's somebody you care about with you, and that was the case, wasn't it?
Sorry?
And that was the case here, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. My girlfriend was with me in Ecuador at the time because I hadn't seen her for probably a month because of having to leave Britain. So,
she was there in advance. She'd been waiting there, you mean, or
what, in Ecuador?
yeah.
No, she came on like 2 days after me.
Okay, right.
And for a holiday, and I was there waiting for the passengers to come out.
Mm.
And I was and send the passenger back and then show her around Ecuador for 2 or 3 weeks. And of course, that didn't happen.
No, so that was meant to be the smooth part. You know, take care of what had to be taken care of.
Ecuador 6 hours by the time she got arrested.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Well, not even a decent night's sleep in a hotel.
Unbelievable.
You know, strictly speaking, by the rule book of the underworld, hotels are an iffy kind of thing anyway.
Yeah.
And certainly to have the cargo there, you must have been pretty confident that it was something unusual. It was a tent, wasn't it?
Yeah, because we were impregnating it in plastic, in rubber, sorry, and then putting it in the ground sheet of the tent. I mean, it was pretty well disguised. It couldn't be detected by dogs, by X-ray, by scanners, and we even put a chemical in it to counteract the reactive test that they used.
Okay, so the reagent wouldn't be triggered by squishing it up.
London.
That's pretty good.
They knew.
Oh, wow. Only I won't even ask how she felt about that. She must have been panic-stricken.
Yeah, she wasn't very happy.
But I think you were in contact for the first week or so because you were held at the airport remand prison, was it?
Well, it was at the Interpol, Ecuadorian Interpol station, which was right by the airport.
Okay, but it's actually not connected with Interpol, the Paris-based information exchange.
Well, I don't know actually, because I mean they were part of Interpol.
They are, but you know, I used to think I'd watch movies and they'd have this is Joe Friday, the Interpol agent, and all that.
Yeah.
But they don't really have agents unless they, you know, have somebody cleaning up in there. It's all police organisations that want information shared through there have to pay a membership fee, and they have this Paris office where they do all this exchanging. You know, I don't know, for example, Italy like to talk to Peru about such and such, and they handle that initial liaison stuff, so that you don't have a policeman in Germany just ringing the local in a Peruvian telephone exchange. But apart from doing their own annual report on the amount of inquiries they get, I don't think they certainly haven't got any powers in any law, and they don't really do investigations. So
Yeah,
it's but in movie writing, of course, it's a great convenience to have an international police agency.
yeah,
So it's a handy name, I suppose, um, because it you know police, it's a universal name. It makes sense that somebody would use it like that. But now, in contrast, normally in the way these things go, the first week held in the investigative sort of custody
yeah.
was often the best, and the prison's the really awful part. But it wasn't particularly good where you were, was it?
No, the police holding cells were terrible. They didn't provide any food. There was one running tap for water, which
And
was cold.
you you could see your girlfriend across the way
Yeah,
or something.
we were basically in it was like an enclosed courtyard with a skylight over it. So there was a police officer sat on a desk here, and
Mm.
then the female cells here, and then our cells were sort of directly in front, so we could talk to each other across because they were
Well, I mean, did you have to scream, or was it like
no, no,
only a few
very
feet?
close. It was literally 2 or 3 meters.
Oh, wow. If you could throw over a cigarette or something, if you had.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could just get the police to pass things over if you needed
Oh,
to.
because you're just sitting there. Yeah. In the people arrested in at the airport in Bangkok would end up at Chinatown police station, and there were
Yeah.
women there, and you could see them huddled under a pile of blankets. I didn't even really realize they were there. But I mean, was there anything you could? I mean, you were familiar with the country. You had friends there. Was there anything reassuring you could say to her?
Well, I mean, yeah, basically, I promised that I'd get her out there, and I did. I got her out after about, I think it was
What would
about
it be?
5 months.
Oh, 4 or 5 months. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's
But
pretty good by the standards of over there, isn't it?
yeah, unfortunately, though, I told her not to come back to Britain because obviously the police were going to have a field day if she did,
Yeah.
even though she was innocent.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, her knowing that she was innocent was said, well, I've not done anything wrong. Why should I have a problem? And I said, because the British police will make a problem for you,
Yes. And did they?
regardless of whether or not you're innocent. So I'd arranged an apartment for her in Barcelona to go and stay at, and to bring her daughter from Britain because
Okay.
she had a 14 or 15-year-old daughter at the time. So I was
Right.
going to have her brought out to Spain, and they could just stay there and watch from a distance to see what happens with the case in Britain. But instead of that, she decided to fly straight back to Britain and was
Why?
thereafter arrested. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
would you think it was? She was so stressed she wanted to go straight back into the arms of
Yeah,
family or
yeah,
something
pretty
like that.
much wanted to see her daughter and I think she genuinely, because she hadn't done anything, she genuinely couldn't understand why she would have a problem.
A lawyer said to me once years ago, Peter, shaking his head over something. There's nothing worse than somebody who's innocent from our point of view. It leads to nothing but trouble. And in a way, um, it makes the police do things that they go the extra mile to kind of manufacture trouble for people when there's no case against them. But I mean,
Yeah,
she didn't actually spend any jail time back in the UK, did she?
yeah, she did.
Oh, she did.
Yeah, they sentenced her. She was found guilty at trial. God knows how. Well, I mean, basically, the police fabricated evidence against her and said that every time that she'd either been on holiday with me or that I'd sent her on holiday,
Oh,
that
that counted as a job.
yeah, they said that she'd been carrying cocaine, which is an absolute lie. They fabricated evidence and said that they I mean, they may have detected traces of cocaine in the bags because some of the bags that had been used for other things, other trips, but they were bags at the end of the day. It doesn't mean that she was carrying cocaine because she wasn't. So
You
they
know,
this is there's the main part of the evidence, and also one receipt that they found where I'd asked her to buy some methanol, which is legal, a legal chemical that you could buy over the counter. And because of that, they said, well, she bought methanol, and we found traces of cocaine in all these bags. Therefore, she must have been carrying cocaine back, which she wasn't. Do you know what she was saying? They sentenced her to 13 years in prison, of which
wow.
7 years.
I really must clarify something here. You might think we're talking about some railroad trial in a country where the golden thread of British justice doesn't run so smoothly. But in fact, this is after Peter's girlfriend returned to England against advice and found herself facing a conspiracy trial. And things didn't go badly because, as we say, she had the kind of lawyers that you have to carry through a whole trial. She was found guilty, and as Peter will tell you, treated harshly. I've never
Legal.
heard about this one before. What it was, I'm guessing, a conspiracy charge because that's
Yeah,
where you get everything in that shouldn't be there.
yeah,
And she took it to a jury, did she?
yeah. She went not guilty, took it to a jury at Bristol Crown Court, and was found guilty. And it
That
was
jury must have been. I mean,
stopped.
you
I
know,
mean,
the
I've
trouble is that.
been really rubbish.
Oh, the lawyers, you mean? Yes, yes.
Yeah, to have let that happen.
They're not very good. I don't know what your experience generally is, but
Well,
I
you guys
find
have to do the work for them, basically.
really, yeah. If you don't, if you throw yourselves at their supposed skill and say, "Look,
Yeah, you
what
want
can you do here?" You're in for a trap straight away because you work out the plan, you point them towards the
that.
evidence,
Yeah,
and even if you've got time, write out the questions if you're taking the stand that they should ask you because
that's
they won't
exactly.
have a damn clue. You know, one of the worst lawyers I ever had, this guy was sort of a fan, you could say. He kind of liked the adventures that I got up to, but it made it so bad for me in the court because he was kind of saying to the jury, yeah, he's guilty as hell, but I like him. You should like him. Let him off, you know. And that's not, I wanted to, I would rather point to the lack of evidence, you know, which was,
Oh, God.
there was none. It was one of those,
Were you found guilty?
oh, day, they went out for 2 days, and day one was, you know, they were all kind of smiling at me, happy. No doubt got home, Googled me up. I was screwed after that. I couldn't win a littering charge at the city dump. You know, really, um, that it it was a, a, a mail job that I had nothing to do with. You can imagine something comes through the letterbox.
Yeah,
Uh, didn't open it. Why didn't you open it? That's a bit strange. I said to the prosecutor, well, if I had opened it, you would have said that's proof that I knew something
yeah.
was going on. It wasn't in my name. Why should I have anything to do with it? Now, I expected this lawyer to leap up and say things like, well, any one of you could have something poked through your letterbox,
Yeah.
and if a policeman comes along and tries to hold you responsible for whatever that was, you wouldn't feel happy about it. No, instead, he went on reading poems from T.S. Eliot. It was the most pathetic thing about, you know, trying to seek their sympathies. So you're sitting over there getting reports back of this travesty that's going on. I mean, have you seen her since?
I've bumped into her once in my hometown since I got released, literally in passing on the street, and she said hello, and that was it. And as you can imagine, she doesn't
Yeah.
want to talk,
Odd
which is
that, isn't
understandable.
it? You know, um, I think we often feel worse, and certainly in the long term, about the splashback effect that happens to, you know, unintentionally to people around
Yeah,
us.
yeah,
Um, and when you mentioned too that this ground sheet tent thing. Now the police weigh it up. Now in most jurisdictions they'll extract whatever they
Yeah,
call the illegal substance, weigh it up, and that's your charge. But
yeah.
that was not the case in this.
No, in Ecuador they weigh everything. I mean everything, and they charge you with that. I did say to my lawyer at the time, I said I was almost insistent that they extract it because I knew it would make for a lesser sentence
Yeah.
because I knew what was in there.
Mm.
And she said, "Oh no, it won't make any difference. 2 kilos is the same as 100 kilos here, and you'll still get 8 or 12. Won't make any difference." Blah blah blah. Boy, did I regret not doing that
You
because
know, it was a lazy principle on her part. She didn't want to do the work, did she?
yeah, the new president came in, Rafael Correa, and gave out an indulto, which is like a presidential pardon for anyone with 2 kilos and less. And I would have been released on that. And of course, because I hadn't extracted it, I was up for 8 kilos instead. So I didn't
Cast you
get it.
by. Oh, that's
I
cool.
was
I think
absolutely
that's fate telling you that if you've got what seems like a sensible idea, go
so I
ahead with
know
it, no matter what.
just trust instincts.
True enough. And now, even though you'd been to South America a bit before that, I guess, how was your Spanish at the time of your arrest?
Wasn't very good.
But I suppose after 9 years, you could hold
Yeah,
up a
not bad.
conversation quite well. Yeah. Sometimes it's good. I found the more I learned of the language of a business destination, sometimes it was good not to let on that I knew too much of it. This
Yeah,
particularly in India, Pakistan with Urdu, because and in Lebanon too, you could hear them making jokes about you, and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, just smile at him. We'll fuck him over later. um, so the well, I did notice too that it seemed kind of pricey, the lawyers there. It wasn't like you were just being had or anything.
Ecuador are the biggest thieves out there, basically. I mean, I remember the first lawyers who were recommended by the embassy came in all suited up, expensive suits on, secretaries. There was about 4 of them turned up.
A team.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, this is a lot. And, all looking very fancy and whatnot. And they said, oh, yeah, we can get you a 4-year sentence for $250,000. And
Well, you could build a prison for that over
I
there.
know, I said to them, I could get a lesser sentence in England for far less than that. And I said, no, thank you. And thanks all the same and goodbye. And
And yet
luckily,
these are ones that the embassy recommended.
yeah,
Well, not
yeah,
recommended, but on their list anyway of trusted
yeah, on
ones.
that list.
Mm.
But so I was in the holding cells with a bunch of Arabs who were there for uh, shipping cocaine out to Lebanon, actually, and Syria to fund Hamas, who I made very good friends with because most of them spoke English and they were, quite sound.
Mm.
And I ended up using their lawyer, who was a local woman, and she was very good, actually. Uh,
She had, I think she was married or something to somebody who was also an official, or
oh
oh
no,
no, wait, and he was a crook, wasn't he?
that,
Yeah.
that was one of the
Mm.
Arabs was married to the vice president's niece.
All right.
Yeah, he was in prison with my girlfriend.
Uh, and not that I suppose that connection did him any real good.
No, not really.
People often don't you see that you know it, you go from being the newbie in a prison to then being the old hand. So when you come across somebody who's just come in,
Yeah,
say from the UK or even anybody who speaks English really, and you're the one now giving advice. I suppose you found yourself in that position after some time.
yeah, yeah, a lot. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Obviously, as soon as new people came in, particularly Brits, we'd always get hold of them and just give them a briefing and on what to do and what not to do, and who to avoid and or who
So,
did.
how many prisons? We'll put aside the Interpol holding cell, but how many what you call regular prisons in Ecuador did you go through?
Well, I was in Quito for the first 2 years, and then obviously because I tried to escape, they transferred me to the port city of Guayaquil, which the prison there was at that time something like the fourth most dangerous prison in the whole of the South American continent.
Right, that's quite an honor.
The British police were hoping that I'd end up dead, which
Uh,
yeah.
I'm getting the kind of subtle feeling here that your relationship with have you disappeared there? Huh. I think you've disconnected there, Peter. After Peter had finished talking to his friend, we got back to sentencing around the world. Great variation. Of course, Thailand was 99 years to life or death, but not every country adheres to that, and even in, well, USA or Britain, it can be a life sentence. But how did they apply it in that part of South America, Ecuador? Well, we got cut off there. It was just as Peter was saying something probably unfavourable about the British police. They haven't always been his friends, isn't it? So, okay. Now, as you might have known from the earlier interviews, Peter spent over 9 years in 2 or 3 prisons in.
Oh yeah.
And had no, there was an escape attempt, wasn't there? What made you decide to make that kind of fatal decision to go for it?
Well, it wasn't a fatal decision. I mean, if I'd gone, it would have been good if I had really. But it was just the fact that every year, every 6 months that went by, I thought I was going to get out. So, the 6 months would go by and I wouldn't get out, and it'd be another 6 months.
So, I mean,
So,
why did you have those expectations of geting out every 6
well,
months?
because it was, I mean, it was easy to bribe people over there, and I was trying to do it that way. But of course, the British police found out about this and put the kibosh on it.
They sound like they were really monitoring everything that was
Yeah,
going on with you. Now,
yeah.
was it this originate in Scotland, the Scottish police particularly, or was it a kind of national
No,
thing?
I think it was the English police more so than the Scottish. I suppose you'd have to say the British police overall.
Oh, okay. But
But
I mean,
it was soccer that took me.
I think there are people who've spoken to me about soccer say they kind of look at themselves like the Americans about their FBI. They think there's something
Yeah,
special in a particular category,
yeah,
uh, and it's pretty much an illusion. I mean, well, just last week they were released a whole lot of financial transactions reports. I don't know whether you caught that story. Something
yeah,
like 100,000 reportings of suspicious financial activities reported by banks back to
yeah,
them, and they do nothing with it. So,
yeah.
like all agencies, they just take the cases they want. So, you felt, oh, no, your sentence as such was how many years? 15 years or something, was it?
No, it was 12.
12. Okay, but other people were kind of getting out one way or another, and you weren't, I suppose, too.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, had you, what's the security like at the prison where you started your tunnel? Was there
Um,
any other way than tunneling?
Sorry.
Was there any other way of getting out than tunneling?
And we did talk about, because by this point I was friends with a little group of Colombians who were ex-FARC guerrillas.
Mm.
And we were talking about getting some of their friends down to blow the wall of the exercise yard with an RPG.
Sounds good.
Um,
Deafening, but
Take
good.
down covering fire and escape like that, or a helicopter lift even off the roof of the prison, but that was too expensive.
I can
So
imagine.
we were coming up with quite a few different plans.
What about cutting out at night and going for the wall?
The problem was on the outer perimeter of the prison, they had gun towers with police in there with M16 rifles that were permitted to shoot to kill.
Oh, and enjoy it too. I have no
Yeah,
doubt.
obviously. So that was a bit tricky.
Um, but I mean, I've always thought with the things that put me off even the idea of tunneling, you'd need um, an elaborate sort of thing. You need not only digging equipment, like at least a good shovel or spade,
Yeah,
but
but
you've got to lug all that soil out and everything.
it was very easy to get tools in the prison. I mean, because you could get anything brought into the place, and you could renovate your cell because you had to buy a cell there, so you could renovate it. So there were loads of building tools and there, electric tools, whatever tools you wanted, basically. And as well as that, you could get concrete brought in, cement, all sorts of stuff.
Well, the reputation for South American prisons generally is that, and you'll tell me if this is correct, the perimeter is guarded quite well. Um, but what goes on the management inside is kind of left to the prisoners as much as
Yeah, it's
anything
very
else.
much internally controlled by the prisoners. I mean, the second prison that I ended up in was even more so. The place that I was describing earlier in Guayaquil, that
Mm.
prison held 8,000 prisoners when I arrived there.
This is
Split,
Guayaquil.
yes,
Yeah.
over between there was 8,000 prisoners separated over 26 wings, and it was
Wow.
split roughly in half, with one gang controlling one side and another gang controlling the other, who were both at war with each other and also controlled areas of the city. And you can imagine, I mean, 4,000 people on each side. That's a big market for drugs, alcohol, everything. I mean, they had restaurants in there, so they used to tax everything coming in, even the Coca-Cola. They would add like 5 cents or 10 cents to the bottle, and you paid it, and you had to if you wanted to do business.
So,
So
if you were telling somebody that you had to pay the local mob for the coke you had 10 minutes ago, it could completely misunderstand it. It's just the one in the
exactly,
bottle, and you're still paying tax on it.
yeah,
Right. Um, I had kind of got the feeling that quite a few Europeans and British people who had been transferred back from prison in Thailand, and they were finishing off sentences and so on. But what they said, they'd come from a place where they ran their own lives. Their cells they had to paint and fix up and put in what furniture they had, their food. There was
yeah,
market delivered every day, and somebody did the cooking. And pretty much they could have anything they could afford. A bit like, not as extreme as what you're talking about. They had some rules there, but then to transfer from that relative control of your life to a Western or British prison where you have to get issued with toilet paper. The food is what you're getting from the prison kitchen. You have to ask
yeah.
permission for every single thing and send a letter. They found that a harsher kind of intrusion,
Really?
than putting up with what they had in Thailand. But I know you spent a little time in Wandsworth Prison when on your return, finishing it off. But you didn't have that sense that there was something freer about the South
No,
American
because
prison.
basically what happened to me in South America was I started in Quito, where you could have whatever you wanted, and you could have women in there 3 days a week, and even stay over once a fortnight. They could stay from Saturday night through till Sunday afternoon in your cell with you.
How did you keep the cell clear of the other guys in the cell?
Well, it was my cell, so
Oh, it's just a
we
personal cell. Mm.
yeah, you could the other people would have to sleep in the gym, the
Uh,
little gym that we had. So they'd all go out and have a party on the wing, get completely trashed,
mm.
whilst you were in the cell with your girlfriend or wife or whoever.
Yeah.
And that was all good. I mean, we had cable TV, air cons, computers, phones, everything. So then I
Uh,
got transferred from there to Guayaquil,
but
which
but
was
just
all
sorry, I'll come back to that. Just about this tunnel. How long were you at work tunneling away?
I mean, I was employing people to do it for me.
Oh, okay, yeah,
We bought a cell on another wing, obviously on the ground floor,
right.
and a
Yeah,
cell as
yeah.
close as we could get to, because the end of that wing was basically the outer wall of the prison.
Right.
So we bought a cell to, it was the second cell from the end.
Hmm.
So we basically what we did was we dug out underneath the exercise yard, which was tarmac, and then followed the line of the wall of the prison towards the perimeter wall, and then we were going to go under that, and we did get a fair way under, and then
So,
they found
so this wasn't from your actual cell. It was from
no no
a
no no.
spot outside. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I understand now. And how many meters would you think your section got to?
It actually got discovered after because they knew that we were doing it, but they never found the tunnel until after I got transferred to Guayaquil, and
Oh, how did they come to know?
they basically found out because they were excavating around the perimeter of the prison to put in a new road or something. And
Oh,
it was on the news one night. I was stood there watching, and this thing came on saying, "Oh, we found a tunnel in Quito. It was under the wall and out, and they were nearly out." And I knew it was our tunnel.
oh, I'd misunderstood. I thought it was because of the your tunnel that you got transferred.
Well, it was because but they didn't find it, but they knew we were trying that we were trying to escape. So they said that I was in charge of a fuga masiva, which meant a massive
Mass
escape,
escape. Yes, yeah.
take out
But
about
and that
20
was
people.
through an informer of some kind, I guess, was it?
Yeah,
What's the okay? For comparison, I'll say this: in a British prison, we could say that informers, probably, blatant ones, I mean,
yeah,
don't amount to more than 10% of the prison population. Casual informers who just blabbermouth, that's a different thing. In Thailand, it's 100% informers in there. What would it be? What would be the general trustworthiness of? I mean, in an Australian prison, if somebody was, working on a breakout, oh, well, I think I've lost you again.
lost you again. Then
Oh, no, no, back. Oh, we were talking about
yeah, I'd say
comparison.
probably 25% of the prisoners were probably, or maybe even more, when they were informants of some sort.
Okay, that's quite high. What would their reward be for being stool pigeon?
I don't know. I mean, they would just get
Jealous?
more time out of their cells. They would, I don't know. I'm not quite sure.
Mm.
I
But
don't know.
uh, certainly, when I've been a foreigner in a prison, the locals are very resentful of
Yeah,
how you live, if you live better, some imagined great things that the embassy does for you. But my experience, and probably yours as well, with the consular section of embassies when it comes to being in foreign prisons, has always been bad. Not nightmarish, but you had the British police helping the prosecution on the one hand, and so the British police liaison, if they had an embassy in, I suppose, in
in
Quito.
Quito. Yeah.
Yes. Um, and how did you find the consular interaction from there? Were they helpful at all?
Sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't, because the consul changed quite a few times in my
Would
time.
they bring you money in if you needed it?
I mean, you could get money transferred through them, but generally, I would get money sent by Western Union to a trustworthy person outside who would then bring it in cash.
Right. Okay. Yeah. You
It
have to
was
be
all cash.
very trustworthy like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so so anyway, on the strength of that information, you got transferred to Guayaquil,
Quite.
and this
Yeah.
Guayaquil isn't, and
Oh yeah, so I was saying, so basically, I went from Quito, where it was fairly, good, to Guayaquil, where it was worse, and then ended up in because the conditions in Guayaquil were so dangerous after a while, so many people getting murdered. The president had a whole new prison estate built. So we had these maximum security prisons built along the lines of sort of American style prisons. And for I think the last year or two, I ended up being transferred into there, where that was the worst. So things got gradually worse for me rather than the normal of it getting gradually better as you progress through the system. It got far worse.
Really? Yes, it normally is the other way around. But why was it that the newly built, supposedly good prison was worse than the one, the 8,000 strong or whatever it was, prison run by two gangs?
Because it wasn't fully constructed when they moved everyone. They hadn't finished building it, so there wasn't running water all the time. The food was what they gave you. Now, instead of being able to bring food in yourself, you couldn't bring anything in. We didn't
right.
have any visits or any contact for the first month with anyone. There were no pay phones in there. We weren't allowed books, pens, papers, nothing. No newspapers. There were no TVs, no radios, absolutely nothing.
What were they? I mean, well, I think they were running some kind of Supermax or something, did they?
I mean, it was literally, I mean, I actually ended up, when I first got transferred into that prison, on the wing with all of the gang leaders, the main, most heavy people in the prison. There was 15 of us on a wing that was built for 350 people in absolute supermax conditions. I don't know why I ended up on there, but I did. And yeah, it was
that might have been good for your address book, but it certainly doesn't sound like it's very happy.
Half of those people are dead now.
Yeah. The life expectancy there is not
not good if you're a gang leader.
I must say with South America, I was a little bit of a slow learner, that I had to understand that even though it was kind of ruthless, you couldn't so simply solve a problem. For example, my driver had his car stolen by people who then demanded, I forget what it was, $1,000 to get it back.
Yeah.
And I said, look, but we know these big, crooks and gang leaders, or not street gang, but fairly big people. Why don't you go and ask them to go and see these scallywags and get your car back? And I had to realize that, sure, that could be done, but then what you're asking is for a big group to intervene with another little bunch of people for nothing. They would do it, but you would owe them a very big favor to get your driver's car back. And then they would, after I left town, sure, to appease me, they would have done this thing for the driver. They would have gone to him and said, "You're ours now. We got your car back for you. You owe us forever. Your protector's not here any longer. And by the way, when he comes back, you're not his driver any longer. Our man is his driver." It opens. I think it's a. Don't you think it's kind of for people who are, smug about the ways of their life and critical of the choices people make in countries where there's poverty and desperation or real struggle. A little bit of a lesson of understanding there would open a few people's eyes about the realities of having to deal with those things. They don't much. Now, of course, there's a whole lot of other things I want to ask, but I'll save that for some other time. But now that you've been a free man now for what I guess must be
5 years.
5 years? Hasn't been that long. Because I met Pieter in Wandsworth in one of the sections that I was in. he was on his way back from a foreign land, and if it had been up to the Thai government, I would have been on my way out to a foreign land, back to there for, would have been a death sentence commuted to life, and extradition case, which did I win it? Not in a sense, but I got out of it, so I'm free today. But that was 5 years ago, and I don't know whether you typhoid Mary, but we now, to make life tougher, that we've ended up in some kind of lockdown-ish COVID era. I suppose we'll all look upon those days. When you, I mean, from your book, Inferno, just look for Pieter Tritton when you're looking it up on Amazon. There's 2 T's, by the way. You, of course, were really a free man. And how long did that feeling of great elation last after when you were released? How long did that last for?
Quite a while. I mean, to some extent, it's still lasting now.
Yeah.
I still wake up and, thank God I'm not in prison.
Yes, you get that sense of the reassurance that, yes, this is my own bed,
Yeah, I can open the door, turn on the tap. By the way,
do you get, I don't know, I mean, I spent more time in prison in my life than you, because I'm older, I guess, but more careless, but I have a huge number of, in fact, nearly all of my dreams take place in a prison. Does that happen to you at all?
Sometimes, yeah. Not that often so much anymore, but
it was there. Yeah. Any Spanish speakers in your dreams of in the prison dreams?
I mean, if I dream about prisoners, it's almost always in South America.
Right. I'll give dreams one thing. The prisons always look a bit different in the dreams.
Yeah.
But was there anything surprising or disappointing or unexpected after missing a decade and then coming back to the UK?
Well, I mean, my mother died whilst I was away, so that was hard to deal with.
Of your life taken away from you there. Yeah. And by the way, what I suppose, given your story, which is okay, we all kind of bring things on ourselves, but on the other hand, there's some certain amount of unlucky misfortune in things that have happened to you. Was it what made you decide to write that book? Because it was a good story.
I mean, the odd thing was I actually started writing that when I was in the Interpol cell.
Oh, you didn't waste any time, did you?
No. I mean, I literally remember in the first week writing a letter describing the conditions there and started sending these letters back to my family saying, look, keep these because someday I might write a book about this.
Right.
And I mean, obviously I never expected to spend 10 years in prison, but so I mean, you can imagine in that time I accrued quite a lot of information.
Yeah, a lot
from which to build upon.
And I notice you've actually, I can tell because I know you, that this is something you've written yourself. I can hear your voice, as it were, as I read through it. And it works better for that. I don't know if you've read any of the other books in that category of people who,
not many.
No, well, they're either ones are utter fiction where they've just invented horror stories, or they're kind of distant because some publisher has pushed them into structuring the whole thing around, we want more of this in it and less of that, and you can keep all your little philosophizing out of it and all of that. But I mean, that's your style anyway. You had enough to tell that it doesn't. You were cutting down on a lot of information rather than having to fluff it up. But I suppose, and I think that was published within a couple of years of you coming back to the UK.
Yeah, I wrote it within about. I think it took me about about, I think it was less than a year to write, but it was published in 2017. So,
and I think you've done you had an interview with I think it was Vice magazine. That's kind of gone viral, that one.
An episode of Banged Up Abroad, and a few things for Vice.
How did you? What was it? Did you? Well, I wouldn't say satisfied, but the experience of working with, I think it's Raw Television Productions on Banged Up, didn't feel misrepresented there in any way, or?
No, he actually did a very good job, and oddly enough, the producer was a Scottish woman who I'd met when in Edinburgh through a friend of mine up there at some parties prior to me getting arrested in Ecuador. I'd actually met her, and just by chance, she ended up being the producer on my episode of Banged Up Abroad.
Yeah, it is a small world on that one. There's another thing I've noticed too, having been in places and seen what happens. Now, you spent quite a decade in conditions that, as you say, got kind of worse and worse, and then had a few things to deal with on return, and your health has been affected by accumulation of things, I guess. Now, there's some people that seem to be wrecks, after experiences such as yours. I never really had that. I must say, after even getting out of Bangkok and Pakistan as well, that once that was behind me, that I'm back to being myself. And you seem very much the same. You, why do you think it is that some people seem to be? Do you think they're pretending when they say, "Oh, this ruined my life. I'll never be the same again"?
I think the difference is maybe because up until that point, we both of us were sort of lifelong criminals, really, and a lot of people weren't. If you think about it, the people that ended up in the prison there were maybe just mules, or people that weren't really experienced or had no prior experience of that sort of thing, and therefore weren't really equipped to deal with it and didn't have the mindset to deal with it.
No, I think you've got a main point there. If I look back to the cast of people that were in the Bangkok one, there was a lot of them were kind of in the mule category of just people taking those gigs to earn a living. And the practice back then was to get them to do 4 runs that get through, and the 5th one they'd be turned on. I mean, they wouldn't even get out of the taxi at the airport. The deal was with the USDA and the local Thai police. So it was, their little nightmare that they weren't expecting. And there was Kevin from Hawaii. He was a hopeless junkie, but made enough trouble for himself over there and ended up doing a run, got caught on a hotel room, hidden in the top of the ceiling, left by a previous traveller, passenger that didn't go, got spooked and left it up in the hotel.
Really?
He went over to get it out of the hotel roof.
Okay.
I wouldn't have been having this conversation with him had he not. Now, this defies logic, but instead of just pulling over a chair and climbing into the roof himself, those ceiling bit partitions just push up.
Yeah.
Instead of just doing that himself, he had met it wasn't even a contact, but a taxi driver that he somehow wanted to bring him a ladder so he could get up to it.
Really?
And give the police plenty of notice. Have all this happen day one, and then keep the stuff in there for a couple of days so it matures nicely, and so the taxi driver can decide what he wants to do with all this new information. So there weren't really many people, over there. I was asking, where are all the serious crooks at? Where are all the real players? That's where I want to be, because I need to get organized. I've got things to do. But you over there, I'm guessing, how would you divide? I mean, the really big players must have not been in there, weren't they? Or there were a few and they couldn't
Yeah, I
get
mean,
out.
because I used to get access to them in Quito to the maximum security wing anyway, and quite often they would come and see me to say, oh, can you help us with this, or can you do this or that,
Well, because you were an English speaker and they knew that you were to
Well,
be trusted, or
well, because of that, and because you know, well, because obviously they knew I had a lot of contacts in Europe.
oh yeah, oh no, that's true. Yeah, a gringo is there. Oh, where is he? Oh, he knows everybody in London. Oh, does he? Good.
Yeah,
Um, Often there's it's been quite a few years since I had any dealings with the Colombians, but I think what people don't quite understand, there's a whole hierarchy of things going on there. And there are some smugglers who, I would say that nobody's entirely independent in a way, but they are sort of, and they kick back to somebody over there. But they still need a local because they don't want their passengers, they don't want their couriers running around on the loose seeing people. They couldn't trust any transaction like that. And even if they're Colombians based here, they still learnt they're better off with a local guy. Uh,
yeah,
because you can imagine policemen sniffing around generally, if there's a bunch of English people doing things, they don't really know what they're doing. But if a Colombian comes to see them every third weekend in July, that's
yeah,
worth getting interested in. So could get, I mean, you can see how really useful it would be for them. Um, but I don't know, but were you ever surprised at how much they seem to know to the penny of what something's worth in the UK, and
Mm,
massive expectations they
quite
have?
often that they would have overinflated ideas of the value of things. People would, because quite often people would be robbing them by telling
Oh,
them,
I know,
oh,
yes, yes, undercutting it. So,
higher price and this, that, and the other. So they would end up sending their merchandise to people who would ultimately rob them because of their own greed. Because they'd be saying, "Oh, we can sell it for, say £5,000 over the actual going rate or whatever." And of course, they will always jump at the most lucrative offer, but normally those offers are the ones that were the rubbish and
yeah, yeah.
and the
I suppose
bullshit.
I found a similar thing with from the India-Pakistan side. Though there's what 4 million Indian Pakistanis living in the UK, the people over there wouldn't want to send anything to any of their countrymen here
Yeah.
because they know they're going to get a bad deal.
Mm.
They, it's no kind of slight against them in that sense. It's just the competitive nature of the source place is so strong that they know if they gave it to one of their countrymen here, if they got anything at all, apart from a story of, you wouldn't believe what happened, it certainly wouldn't be the price where they've got a pretty reliable chance that a British person who's lived here all his life is going to give them a reasonable deal and stick to his word because it's in his interest. But
Yeah.
um, I think I think too for are you going to write some more?
Yeah, I'm actually working on the prequel at the moment, to El Infierno, which will be describing all the adventures that we got up to and how and what and when and
There
where.
was that kind of I certainly got that feeling on reading that book that, well, wait a minute, there's clearly a lot going on before page one here,
Yeah, exactly.
and 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 that's certainly worth knowing about. Well,
Yes.
I hope those go well for you, and certainly this if you've got some time next week, well, or whenever. There's a few more things that not only I, but I'm sure people watching this would like to know about Pieter
Yeah,
Tritton,
definitely.
and his adventures in South America and beyond.
Yeah.
All right, good to see you today. Hope all's
Okay.
well, and we'll catch up again.
Okay. Cheers, David. I'll
Thank
see
you.
you soon.
So, I was right, yes? Peter does have a story to tell, and a story worth listening to. You can read his book. It's El Infierno, his story of his time in Ecuador, and there's a link in the description box below this video. But let me know if you want more of Peter and to hear some more details of his past before the arrest in South America, and the kind of things you'd like to know about surviving in a prison in which you were a stranger. He did pretty well. Certainly his Spanish was greatly improved and has all the key slang. Anyway, more of Peter if you say so. Good night.